Leonardo DiCaprio didn't become a global icon overnight. His career is the result of thousands of quiet decisions, near misses, and calculated risks that most people never see, and one early moment that almost pushed him out of acting entirely. He grew up in Los Angeles, far from the polished image associated with his later fame. Raised primarily by his mother in a modest environment, DiCaprio was exposed early to both creativity and instability. His parents separated when he was very young, and money was often tight. But what he did have was access to art, alternative thinking, and a deep curiosity about human behavior, something that would later define his acting style. As a child, DiCaprio appeared in commercials and educational programs, not out of glamour, but necessity. Auditions were routine, rejection was constant, and progress was slow. For years, he was told he didn't fit traditional molds. Too intense. Too unconventional. Not easily categorized. Instead of smoothing those edges, he leaned into them. His first real traction came in the early 1990s through television roles, where he quickly earned a reputation for preparation and focus far beyond his age. Directors noticed that he didn't just memorize lines, he studied people. He observed pauses, posture, and silence. Even in small roles, he treated each character as if it mattered. The real turning point arrived when he was cast in a supporting role that demanded emotional range and restraint at the same time. His performance drew widespread attention, not because it was loud or flashy, but because it felt authentic. Industry insiders began to see him not as a young actor, but as a serious performer with long-term potential. Instead of rushing into safe leading roles, DiCaprio made a surprising choice. He sought out challenging material. Stories that explored obsession, identity, and moral conflict. This decision slowed his rise in some ways, but it also separated him from peers who chased instant stardom. Each project became a deliberate step rather than a gamble. When global fame finally arrived, it was overwhelming. Overnight, he became one of the most recognizable faces in the world. But that level of attention came with constraints. Typecasting loomed. Expectations narrowed. Many actors at that stage settle into repetition. DiCaprio did the opposite. He stepped back. He reassessed. And he began collaborating with directors known for demanding precision, patience, and risk. These partnerships would shape the next phase of his career, defined less by popularity and more by consistency. One of his defining traits became his willingness to disappear into roles. Physical transformation, accent work, psychological depth, nothing was treated as optional. He often spent months preparing, researching historical context, or studying real individuals connected to the story. For him, acting wasn't about performance alone, but interpretation. Despite massive success, recognition at the highest industry level remained elusive for years. This wasn't due to lack of strong performances, but rather the competitive nature of the field and his tendency to choose unconventional characters. Instead of adjusting his choices to chase awards, he stayed the course. Outside of acting, DiCaprio quietly built a parallel identity. Environmental advocacy became a serious commitment, not a branding exercise. He invested time, resources, and influence into causes he believed would shape the future, often working behind the scenes rather than in headlines. As the years passed, his career formed a clear pattern: long preparation, selective roles, deep collaboration, and patience. He avoided overexposure, rarely appearing in projects that didn't challenge him creatively. This scarcity made each release feel intentional. When major recognition finally came, it wasn't treated as a finish line. If anything, it reinforced the approach he had followed all along, focusing on process over validation. Even after decades in the industry, he continued choosing stories that explored uncomfortable questions and complex human motivations. Today, DiCaprio's biography isn't just a timeline of films. It's a case study in long-term thinking. In resisting shortcuts, embracing risk, and maintaining discipline, he built a career that evolves rather than peaks. But the most interesting part of his story isn't what happened on screen, it's what almost happened off it. There was a moment early on when frustration, rejection, and financial pressure nearly convinced him to walk away entirely. That decision, the one he didn't make, shaped everything that followed. At that point in his life, walking away would have been the practical choice. Acting was uncertain, emotionally draining, and offered no guarantees. Many of his peers chose stability instead. DiCaprio didn't stay because success was assured, he stayed because he understood something early: momentum is fragile, but persistence compounds. As his career matured, he became known for something rare in Hollywood: restraint. He avoided constant media exposure, limited interviews, and rarely explained his personal process publicly. This wasn't secrecy for mystique's sake. It was protection. He understood that overexposure erodes credibility, and that mystery keeps audiences focused on the work, not the personality. His collaborations began to define eras rather than individual films. Working repeatedly with visionary directors allowed for trust, creative freedom, and increasing complexity in roles. Each project raised the bar, not just for him, but for expectations around mainstream cinema itself. He proved that commercial success and artistic depth didn't have to be opposites. What's often overlooked is how much discipline sits behind that consistency. DiCaprio is known for declining far more roles than he accepts. Scripts are read slowly. Context matters. Timing matters. He waits, sometimes years, for the right story. This patience is unusual in an industry built on momentum, but it became his competitive advantage. Physically and mentally, his roles demanded commitment. Accents were refined until they disappeared. Mannerisms were studied until they felt subconscious. Historical settings were researched to avoid imitation and instead aim for interpretation. The goal was never to play a character, but to inhabit a perspective. At the same time, he built influence beyond film. Through production work, he gained control over the types of stories that reached the screen. This shift from actor to creative partner allowed him to protect narrative quality while mentoring emerging talent. He wasn't just choosing roles anymore, he was shaping projects from the ground up. Public attention followed him regardless. Fame brought scrutiny, speculation, and narratives he never authored. Rather than fighting it, he ignored it. He rarely corrected rumors or engaged in controversy. Silence, for him, was a strategy, not avoidance, but focus. His environmental work grew alongside his film career, grounded in long-term impact rather than short-term applause. He funded research, supported policy conversations, and used visibility strategically. It wasn't about being seen doing good, it was about making contributions that outlast headlines. As decades passed, DiCaprio's career resisted decline. No forced reinventions. No nostalgia-driven returns. Each phase built naturally on the last. Younger actors cited his choices as templates, not for fame, but for sustainability. He became proof that relevance doesn't require constant presence. The absence of urgency in his decisions often confused observers. Why wait so long between projects? Why avoid trends? The answer was simple: he optimized for longevity, not attention. Every role needed to justify its existence in his body of work. Awards, when they arrived, were acknowledged briefly and then left behind. They were milestones, not motivations. His real measure of success was internal consistency, the ability to look back and see intention rather than compromise. Today, Leonardo DiCaprio's biography reads less like a celebrity arc and more like a blueprint. Build skills quietly. Choose collaborators carefully. Protect your focus. Let results speak. And perhaps most importantly, understand that the most critical moments in a career are often invisible. Not the premieres. Not the applause. But the private decisions where quitting feels reasonable, and continuing feels irrational. Those moments don't trend. They don't get documented. But they decide everything. What makes DiCaprio's path even more instructive is how little of it relied on luck once momentum was built. Early opportunities mattered, but what followed was structure. Patterns. Systems. He treated his career less like a gamble and more like a long-term project that required maintenance, upgrades, and periodic restraint. He learned when to say no, not emotionally, but strategically. Turning down roles wasn't about ego. It was about signal control. Every appearance sent a message about what he stood for as an actor. Over time, audiences learned to trust that message. If he was in a film, it meant something had been filtered, refined, and chosen with intent. This trust changed how his work was received. Viewers didn't just watch performances, they anticipated them. Critics didn't ask whether he could carry a role, they asked what he was trying to explore. That shift only happens when consistency replaces novelty. Another often missed element of his biography is timing. DiCaprio didn't chase relevance during every cultural wave. He allowed trends to pass without reacting. Instead, he waited until a story aligned with both his personal standards and the broader moment. This patience made his projects feel grounded rather than opportunistic. He also understood the cost of overwork. Long breaks between films weren't signs of disengagement, but recalibration. Time away sharpened his perspective and prevented creative fatigue. In an industry where burnout is common, this discipline preserved both performance quality and personal balance. Behind the scenes, preparation remained obsessive. Scripts were annotated. Backstories were developed even when never shown on screen. He often entered projects with a deeper understanding of the character than the final cut could ever reveal. That invisible work translated into authenticity. The kind audiences feel without being able to explain why. As the industry evolved, DiCaprio adapted without abandoning core principles. Streaming, changing audience habits, shifting production models, none of it pulled him into rushed decisions. He remained selective, prioritizing narrative weight over platform trends. His production involvement grew more deliberate as well. By backing stories that might otherwise struggle to reach mainstream audiences, he expanded his impact beyond performance. This role allowed him to influence tone, pacing, and thematic depth while maintaining quality control. Through all of this, his public image stayed remarkably consistent. No dramatic rebrands. No forced relatability. He let the work define him, not the other way around. This stability became rare and valuable. Looking at his full biography, a pattern becomes impossible to ignore. DiCaprio optimized for compounding returns. Skills layered on skills. Relationships deepened over time. Reputation strengthened through restraint. Nothing was rushed, and nothing was accidental. For anyone studying long-term success, in film, business, or creative fields, this approach matters more than individual achievements. It shows that durability is built through choices that don't pay off immediately. And that's the quiet lesson behind his entire career. Not how to become famous, but how to stay effective, respected, and relevant, decade after decade.